Hello! As usual, this is Lama from LK TOEFL. In today's video, I'm going to give you just some killer tips for the reading section in order to get a high score, like maybe 25 and above. But before we mention those 5 tips, I'm going to remind you with one important note, which is going to be included in all of the videos of the reading section. This important note is, in the reading section or in the reading passages, we don't read the passage thoroughly, but we skim it thoroughly in order to remember what we have read. Memorizing is the key to pass and get high scores. Whenever you are studying the reading section, I want you to keep this your note in your mind. And maybe you can write it down on a paper and just hang it on the wall so you always remember it. It's extremely important to memorize what you have read in the passage in order to do your best in the test. And now it's the time to move for the 5 killer tips for the reading section. The first tip will be about the materials you should study in order to get 30 out of 30 or let's say high score in the reading section. Many students actually ask me what books should we study, what materials should we read in order to get a high score or in order to get their desired score. And I always advise whoever asks me this question is that they should study the ETS books. Why the ETS books? Because I think they are the test makers and they know what you should study. They know the organization of the passages in the reading section. They know the organization of the test as a whole. So that's why I recommend to use the ETS books. I will leave the link of those books in the description box below. The second tip will be about enhancing your vocabulary. Enriching your vocabulary is one of the main key points in order to get a high score in the TOEFL. And it's not only important for the reading section, it's also important for the speaking section and for the writing section. You will have a lot of synonyms, then you are not going to face the problem of repeating the same word in the speaking section or in the writing section. But you might ask why it is important for the reading section. The answer is that you should guarantee that you answer all of the vocabulary question in the reading section in a correct way, because those are the only guaranteed questions. Those are the only questions that you should guarantee that you answer all of them correctly prior to the test. And for the vocabulary issue, I recommend one of the following books. The first one is the Barron's Essential Words for TOEFL, and the second one is the Kaplan Vocabulary Book for TOEFL. And I will leave a link for those 2 books in the description box below. The third tip will be about getting familiar with the topics of the TOEFL. And how you do this, it's going to be an exotic way, but it's going to work 90% of the time. As most of us know that the TOEFL always revolves around the same topics, and it varies from biology to sociology to geology, etc. And I have one advice in order to get familiar with all of those topics is that you read or you buy the National Geographic book for kids. This book actually handles the same topics of the TOEFL, since the TOEFL and the National Geography are both derived from the American culture. Then they will meet in many points and in many areas. As a TOEFL teacher, I tried this myself and I found at least 80% of the topics in that books are similar and very close to the topics in the TOEFL. And I know a student who actually bought this book and read it, and she got 30 out of 30 in the reading section. I will leave a link for this book in the description box below. But I want you to keep this in your mind. I'm not telling you that you have to read this book actually to get 30 out of 30. I do get 30 out of 30 without reading it. But if you are struggling with the topics, this is a very helpful way to get familiar with them. Our next tip will be about choosing directly the answer when you find it. When you read the question and you find the answer in the paragraph, go directly and answer the question. Don't read any further sentences or information, because if you do so, you will probably get lost and you will probably answer the question in a wrong way. So, as soon as you find the answer, just go and grab the answer and pick it. Be as brief and fast as you can. And our last but not least tip is that practice, practice, practice. Even though if you just mastered all of the previous steps and just got all of the vocabulary in your mind and so on, if you're not going to practice, you are not going to get your desired score. So practice is the key, and as I mentioned in my first video, there's no glory in practice, but there's no glory without practice. So keep this in your mind and practice as much as you can. And now it's the end of our video. Those are the most important tips which I can give you through this video. For further information and for further tips for the reading section or any other section, you can contact me using the information provided for you in the description box below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for listening, and see you in my next video.